Is Internet of Blockchain actually useful? So, Internet of Blockchain has been an idea, a concept that has formed, I would say, in the last 2 to 3 years of crypto's existence. There's this pervading idea that you can connect blockchains together to leverage their advantages. So, to give a quick and dirty example, you could, if Internet of Blockchains existed, you could theoretically develop something on Ethereum with the security of Bitcoin. So your app or smart contracts could have the security of Bitcoin, and maybe you need the speed of something like Zilliqa. And through the Internet of Blockchain, you could actually take all of these different features and advantages of other blockchains and meld them all into one individual, almost like a meta chain. And meta chains are generally, I'm just calling them meta chains now. I've never heard of this term before. Polkadot calls them parachains. But the idea is that you can create a secondary layer in between these chains that transfers the information. Some of them, like Cosmos, for example, will use TCP/IP, or almost a TCP/IP kind of protocol where they will send information back and forth between the blockchains like that. But the idea is that you can use Internet of Blockchain, and this allows a certain level of robustness and a lot more feature complete blockchain development suite for developers, which is really interesting if you think about it, because obviously we have these very, very powerful platforms like Ethereum, like Bitcoin, and the idea that you can combine their strengths into something that is even better and ignore or otherwise shirk or avoid their weaknesses is very, very compelling. So it's really, really interesting if you could create something like a gambling game that used the security of Bitcoin. Bust-A-Bit is one of these games, actually. But Bust-A-Bit doesn't use Internet of Blockchain. But you get the idea for how valuable this kind of thing could actually be. So the first thing really is that segregated blockchain in general. So what we have now, we have this system where we have Bitcoin, then we have Ethereum, then we have all of these other blockchains, Cardano, Zilliqa, so on and so forth. And they're all good at different things, but the problem is it segregates the value. It segregates the value across many different blockchains rather than having one continuous flow, one continuous almost pool of liquidity or pool of value that people can go in and draw resources from. So it's almost like if you are tapping, think about Europe, for example. Here's actually a great example. So Europe, the economic market in Europe is split across many, many different countries. So we have Italy, we have Germany, we have France, Spain, Slovenia, so on and so forth. Greece, if you can call them an economy. Sorry, Greece subscribers. Get your game together. So we have all of these different markets in Europe, and obviously they were not as strong as developing for a market like in America. In America, there's 300 million Americans. It's much bigger. And you can even compare America to somewhere like China. China is much bigger even than America. 1.3 billion Chinese people in China. And so that's obviously a much larger market. And so you see, as you can get to larger markets, it enables economies of scale to really take in and really take effect. And so it makes a lot more sense for you as a developer or as someone who is interested in getting a piece of that economy to work in a place that is much more, that is larger, that has a larger liquidity pool, that has a larger potential set of customers, that has a larger audience, because it means you'll be able to scale faster. It means you'll be able to scale more. It means you'll be able to find your audience much more quickly and easily, because obviously for larger places like China, things kind of spread like wildfire. For if you develop a really cool app and you live in Amsterdam, the chances are very difficult that your app is going to get outside of Holland. And so there's definitely benefits to that. And so I look at Bitcoin and Ethereum and these platforms in the same way, where what we have now is we have Bitcoin, and sure, things are developed on Bitcoin, but what if someone wants to develop something on Ethereum? Well, now you have this segregation of value to where you cannot access the Ethereum market without developing an Ethereum specific product. And you're kind of stuck and marooned here on this Bitcoin. Even though Bitcoin is the top crypto, you as a developer would love to get exposure to the Ethereum crowd. You would love to get exposure to the IOTA crowd. I'd love to get exposure to the Tron crowd. All of the different blockchains, it makes sense for you to have a much larger liquidity pool. And so we see Ethereum, as a good example of this, Ethereum really, to me, is almost, in this, continuing with this example, is kind of like the EU. So the EU takes all of these different countries and puts them together and says, well, here's our economic bloc, and here's what we're trying to do. Here we have a much larger liquidity pool because everyone is contributing to it, even though they're different niches. And so Ethereum is kind of the same way. It's a general infrastructure architecture platform. Wow, that was a whole bunch of techno babble. But it's an infrastructure where you can build a lot of different things. You can build games, you can build apps, you can build lots of different software, you can build wallets, whatever you want. And that really lends itself to increasing the appreciation of the value for Ethereum. And as we can see, Ethereum is one of the top coins because it enables this. So you compare a platform like Ethereum that allows for other things to be built upon it, compared it to a more niche use case platform like, let's say, Zilliqa, since we were talking about Zilliqa. Zilliqa is really good at being very, very fast, many transactions per second, but it's not very good at much else. So that means that Zilliqa is much more niche. And if you go on CMC, you will see that Zilliqa is a lot lower on CMC, on CoinMarketCap, because of that. It reflects exactly on the value. And so one can imagine if you could actually connect these different niche blockchains, that you would actually have a compounding multiplicative effect on the amount of the token value, appreciation of value, and things like that. Because if you could now develop on Zilliqa, and you could also port over to Ethereum and port over to Bitcoin somehow and use everything, and I could run your Zilliqa app by using my Bitcoin, and I never have to touch Zilliqa. Well, then somehow or another we would do some kind of conversion or atomic swap to where my Zilliqa tokens are now a lot more useful and a lot more in demand, because now I have the Bitcoin crowd using them. And so my Zilliqa tokens are going to appreciate. Bitcoin is going to appreciate because there's users over there who are starting to use this new app, who now have access to an app that they didn't have access to before. So you can see that there's a lot of benefits to this. So the first question that a lot of people have is Internet of Blockchain useful? Is the ability to connect these blockchains something that is compelling? Does it make sense? And in my opinion, I think yes, for all of the reasons I've stated before. Now, the second thing, which is a little bit more interesting. So now we know, or at least we can theorize, that Internet of Blockchain is something that will be useful. The second question is this something that is coming anytime soon? Is this something that we are going to be seeing in the next, say, year to 5 years? Or is this something that is really so far out there? Because this really is, when we look at crypto in general, we hear a lot of talk about things like STOs. We hear a lot of talk about things like institutional investment. But the truth of the matter is that Bitcoin itself is really only 10 years old. And that's just Bitcoin. Ethereum, obviously, even younger than that. And so it takes a long time for these things to be built. And so is it coming anytime soon? It's hard to say, because we are still so new to this. So I know several different projects. So talk about Securitize, for example. Securitize wants to do STOs on blockchain. That's great. They have most of the infrastructure actually already ready for production ready. Polymath, same thing. The problem is the world is not ready really to accept this kind of thing. And so it's not as powerful as it could be, let's say in 5-10 years, when a lot more people are in crypto and understand crypto and are willing to use these solutions. And so even though we might have Internet of Blockchain tomorrow, on a technical level, will there actually be market adoption of this thing? Will there really be the killer apps that we're looking for that are going to make use of these things? Are there going to be apps that utilize the Internet of Blockchains into leveraging and connecting all of these different blockchains together? Hard to say. And I think my answer for now is probably no. I think in the short term, it's certainly not going to happen. Really, are there any apps today? You can think of it this way: are there any dApps today that require any kind of Internet of Blockchain advantages? Not really. Most apps are built for that blockchain. So there's a few rare examples where it goes counter to that. Ethereum is one of them. CryptoKitties was built on Ethereum. It was very obvious once CryptoKitties was going viral that Ethereum simply could not keep up with the massive amounts of transactions. So there is an example where if CryptoKitties utilized something like Internet of Blockchain and used either a side chain or a plasma chain or some other kind of chain, then it could actually have scaled a lot more beyond what it ended up scaling to, and it could have really went viral. So I always look at CryptoKitties as one of those things that really could have It really was one of those things that almost brought crypto to the mainstream. But the problem was that the transactions that really just couldn't, Ethereum couldn't handle it. And so it never could reach that zenith, that critical point where everyone is talking about it. Everyone wants their Tamagotchi or whatever. And as I always personally put it, when I look at crypto projects, my general stance is that, especially in the last 2 years or so, with all of the ICOs that we've seen, what we're generally doing is we're spending billions of dollars with a B, on infrastructure without actually looking to see if there's any kind of customers there. And that is just, it's pretty depressing, because we have things like EOS, which is they raised $4 billion, and it's massive. And what are they doing? How many customers do they have? What's the adoption? There really is none. And so we see all of these other ones that are Ethereum killers, but we're gonna beat Ethereum. But at the same time, there's no market adoption. There's no customers for it. And so that's the same way that I look at Internet of Blockchain, where if tomorrow Internet of Blockchain was a real thing, so we're talking about Cosmos, we're talking about Polkadot, we're talking about Arc, we're talking about BlockNet. If one of these actually comes out tomorrow with a solution that says we have solved Internet of Blockchain, now everyone can do things cheaply and easily across blockchain, will it even matter? Because we will have spent all of this time, all of these years building this massive infrastructure and not have found a single user among them. This video was sponsored by Cryptowatch. Are you a crypto degen? Do you spend countless hours in front of your PC babysitting your leverage trades? Well, babysit no longer. With Cryptowatch, you can spend countless hours in the comforts of your own bed, waiting for those SMS alerts. Track how wrecked your portfolio is that week with their portfolio tracker. And you can also check the price of your favorite shitcoins. If you'd like to join Cryptowatch, there's a link in the description below. Happy trading!